Friday, August 24th, 2018, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I'd like to talk about history, and it's going to involve the Bolshevik Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, Wall Street, the City of London, gold, the Tsar Nicholas II, and you might ask, why do we want to look back so far? Oh, I think it has a lot to do with what's happening today. It has a lot to do with the New World Order, or the One World Government crowd, or globalist crowd, being so anti-Russia, the deep state, the British government, and the lessons of what happened to Tsar Nicholas II, whose family was executed just over 100 years ago in July of 1918 by the Bolsheviks. I'll look at this book again. I'll look at Anthony Sutton, what he said, who wrote books about this. And before though, let's quickly look at what the markets are doing. Some of you have commented, oh, you don't need to do a market review. We know where the markets are, but it's very few of you who ask that. I think most people still like that I cover the markets. Until then, I'm going to keep doing it. So it's just gone 9 a.m. London. Gold right now, it's 11.89, so it's up almost $4. It was a frustrating day yesterday. Gold started moving down before the dollar started moving up. The bullion banks and that kind of crowd probably knew there's going to be some kind of intervention in the FX market, and lo and behold, the dollar strengthened a bit later on. So we're up this morning 1/3%, 11.89, just below 11.90. The range has been 11.83 to 11.90. Silver got hit hard yesterday, of course, underperformed. This morning it's doing a little better. It's up almost, 0.75%, up 11 cents at 14.60. Stock market, the Dow is up 55, 0.25%, 25,711. S&P is up 5, 28.62, and the Nasdaq is up 18 points. Nasdaq 100 future 74.31. The currencies are rebounding a little bit. By that I mean the pound and euro, which are big parts of the dollar index. The pound's at 128.32, up 0.15%. The euro is up 0.17 at 115.60. The dollar is a little strong against the yen, marginally 0.1%, 111.40. And the yuan is a bit stronger this morning. The dollar is down 0.25% against the yuan at 6.87. And crude oil actually has rebounded fairly well in the last few days. It's back up to almost 69. It's at 68.40, up 1% this morning. Emerging market currencies still very volatile. Yesterday, the Brazilian currency made new recent highs up to around 4.15, closed around 4.12. Key level there is 4.28, which was an intraday high back in the end of 2015. Situation in Brazil being hurt by politics and the strong dollar, so still important to keep an eye on those. Turkish lira fairly stable right now. The dollar is at around 6.10. The dollar's come off a little bit against the South African rand as well. The New World Order, or the Globalists, gold, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Congress of Vienna, which was kind of like the Versailles Treaty, peace conference after the Napoleonic Wars back in the 1820s. Yeah, I think we need to look back at these events, because it tells us a lot of what's happening today, and even why Russia has been accumulating so much gold in the last 10 years or so. And they keep accumulating gold. They're getting rid of U.S. treasuries as well. We need to look back at this history. First of all, I wanted to let let you know about Anthony Sutton. I'll put this video in the cards above and in the description below, a link to it. And it's a 13-minute video where Anthony Sutton, who's written many books about Wall Street, how they financed the Bolshevik Revolution, financed Germany in the 1930s, and so on and so forth. In this video, he talks about Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, how Trotsky, Lenin, and a lot of these Bolsheviks were financed by Wall Street, by the City of London, and even by the German government, which was supposedly at war with Britain and the US during World War I. And he even talks about how the Red Cross mission that went to Russia during the revolution was actually composed of only 2 doctors, and the majority of the other guys on that mission were bankers or lawyers from Wall Street, and how they one of the Chase bankers donated $1 million to the Bolsheviks in Petrograd, which is present-day St. Petersburg. So I highly recommend you listen to this video, and to understand that I'm not making this up. Anthony Sutton he worked for Hoover Institution at Stanford University as a researcher. He had to leave though, because he started researching all these things, and he found out some very uncomfortable things for the elite and the people who run these kinds of institutions. And now I want to also go into this book, The World Order by Eustace Mullins, Our Secret Rulers. And I think this explains as well very clearly why there's so much animosity nowadays from the Anglo-American sphere against Russia. This Russiagate, blame Russia for everything. And that's more, of course, the deep state in the US and the British government, the Skripal case. You need to go back and look, for example, back at the Congress of Vienna, which came about, was called after the Napoleonic Wars. And on page 10, this is what Eustace Mullins says. After the fall of Napoleon, Salomon Rothschild persuaded the ruler of Austria to issue patents of nobility to the 5 brothers. They were the 5 Rothschild brothers. One was in London, one was in Naples, the other was in Vienna, one was in Frankfurt, and the other one was Paris. The Congress of Vienna was the emergence of the moth from its cocoon. He means the world order, the globalists. The diktat of this Congress was a simple one. The aristocracies of Europe must submit to our will, or they're doomed. The death sentence upon the noble lines of Europe was pronounced by those who had the will to carry out their edict. It took another century to perfect the work, not because the killers were weak, but because they wished to proceed cautiously. And one of the royal families that didn't really play ball at the Congress of Vienna were the Romanovs, or the Russian imperial royal family. And that kind of scuppered or delayed the New World Order globalist plan. But then they with World War I, they were able to get rid of them. Just recently in July was the 100th anniversary when the Bolsheviks assassinated Tsar Nicholas II and his whole family. I think it was July 17th, was the 100th anniversary. But what's more interesting, where does gold come in? Well, on page 11, Eustace Mullins goes on about what happened during the Bolshevik Revolution to the gold that the Tsar had. Probably one of the richest men in the world at the time. So on page 11, he says, after the fall of Napoleon, the Rothschilds turned all their hatred against the Romanovs. Well, they did because the Romanovs did not want to play ball, right? But he goes on to say, this campaign against the Romanovs culminated on November 6, 1917, when a dozen Red Guards drove a truck up to the Imperial Bank building in Moscow. And it's interesting because listening to Anthony Sutton of how Wall Street financed these Bolsheviks, you could see why they go after the Imperial Bank, right? They loaded the imperial Jew collection and $700 million in gold, loot totaling more than $1 billion. The new regime also confiscated the 150 million acres in Russia personally owned by the Tsar. And the interesting thing about the gold as well that the Tsar and the Russian imperial family had was that they did they thought they did the right thing. They had quite a lot of gold in Russia, but they also had it spread out in different countries. The only mistake they made is that they put all of their money and the gold with the people who were actually against them, with the bankers, Wall Street, City of London, Paris, and I'll read here. So he goes on, of equal importance were the enormous cash reserves which the Tsar had invested abroad in European and American banks. The New York Times stated that the Tsar had $5 million in guaranteed trust and $1 million in the National City Bank. Other authorities stated it was $5 million in each bank. Between 1905 and 1910, the Tsar had sent more than $400 million to be deposited in 6 leading New York banks: Chase, National City, Guarantee Trust, JP Morgan, Hanover, and Manufacturers Trust. Well, these were all the banks that owned the Federal Reserve, right? These were the principal banks controlled by the House of Rothschild through their American agents JP Morgan and Kuhn Loeb and Co. These were also the 6 New York banks which bought the controlling stock in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 1914. They have held control of the stock ever since. And then he talks about how the Tsar also had money in England and in France. So the Tsar had 115 million in gold in 4 English banks. The Tsar had 100 million at the Bank of France, 80 million at the Bank of Paris, which was a Rothschild bank. And in Berlin, he had 132 million at the Mendelssohn Bank, which had long been bankers to Russia. And he talks about how they try to get this money back. There were some claimants, but that money, has never gone back to Russia, has never gone back to anyone who's related to the imperial, to the Romanovs. And you can understand why now the Russians have been buying so much gold since around 2007-8. Their gold holdings have gone from below 500 tons to almost 2,000 tons right now. And if you understand, we keep getting told that the Russians and Putin are communists, but I think they're far from it. They know what happened to their country. People who imposed the communism and the Bolshevism on them, and they actually don't want that anymore. And I think they learned the lesson of keeping their money close to them. Hopefully, the Russians will not keep their gold abroad, and I think they're not doing that. But and I think all of this kind of explains why there's so much animosity against Russia, why there's so much furore against President Trump meeting President Putin in Helsinki for the summit. And it just goes to show that maybe President Trump is trying to fight this New World Order crowd by trying to work with the Russians, trying to cooperate. And Anthony Sutton talks about why did Wall Street finance the Bolshevik Revolution? Why did they want to do this to Russia and the Romanovs? Well, the first reason was that they wanted the monarchies to have no power, because you can't have a world order with strong monarchies all around. You got to make them subservient to you. And also Wall Street, they thought Russia would be a competition for the U.S. It's a huge country. It was starting to develop. You would be competition for Wall Street. So they had to have a captive market. Well, how do you do that? You finance a revolution and you create a dictatorial system that actually hurts the economy in Russia. But the other thing they did is that they were able to bring a lot of the investment that started in the Soviet Union early on came from Wall Street and American companies. And that Anthony Sutton talks about. I'm not making this up. A lot of the big multinationals from the US and Europe helped the Bolsheviks rebuild the economy. So to finish off, I'd just like to show you a coin. It's from 1899 and it's 10 gold rubles. Here it is, 10 gold rubles. Don't know if you can see that. And it's also got Tsar Nicholas II on the back. And if you don't know about the Russian imperial coins, they had a fineness of 90%, just like the US coins. So the same standard as US coins, 90% gold. So 10 rubles there, it says it's 8.6 grams, or just under a quarter of an ounce. So I've got a little bit of a piece of Russian history here holding this coin. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on DTube, Steemit, and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.